Alright, so we went through a run with this build on Lee Sin, but let's take a look at what other options there are for him. First, with his constellations, he has his Dragon Spirit, which when you play your second spell each round, you get bonus stats. With the 1 star, it's +4/+4, and with the 3 star, it's +8/+8. Then from his 2 star, you get your extra mana gem, as well as round start, you get a fleeting Twin Disciplines, which is just a burst spell that gives you some stats, and you get that in hand. So this is one spell that you're able to play each round, provided you have the mana. And then if you're able to play a second spell, you can get your bonus stats. So primarily, things you want to do with him are things that will help you generate spells. This will make sure both that you're able to level up Lee Sin, as well as get enough power to get that bonus from his stars, or get enough spells cast to get the bonus power from his stars, so getting that +8/+8. So for the relics here, we, on our build, we're using Chosen by the Stars, Perfect Hex Core, and Searing Brilliance. Perfect Hex Core, this is just a free spell that you can play each turn. Really strong from that side. You get it in your hand even when you don't have Lee Sin on the board. So really easy way to just make sure you're getting up to that 8 spells as quickly as possible, as well as just another way to quite easily trigger that +8/+8. Really strong there. Chosen by the Stars, this build was mostly focused on getting him beefed up, but you can easily substitute this out for many other different things if you want to focus on other characters on your board, or other spells and things like that. Generally, because you are getting a lot of stats on a single unit, having some way to get Overwhelm is really good. In this case, we were trying to get Overwhelm onto Lee Sin. It works especially well with his level up. When he challenges something, attacking in, he does a Dragon Rage at it, which effectively kicks the enemy into the Nexus, striking the Nexus, and then recalling it if it doesn't kill it. But when he does this, if he has Overwhelm, he will both essentially use his power to strike the Nexus once with the kick, and then his Overwhelm hit, because he recalls the enemy if they don't die, he's guaranteed to hit the Nexus again for the amount of power that he has. So, if you have him at 20 power, he's going to kick the enemy into the Nexus for 20, and then you Overwhelm into the Nexus for another 20, doing 40 damage. So really strong to get him with Overwhelm, but you can also do things that'll give your general board an Overwhelm, so that you get that earlier in the rounds. You can use certainly, Cruel Experiments, Beast Within, or Beast Within, or Troll King's Crown. So any one of those is fine. These all are good forms of Overwhelm. And if you want to focus more on Lee Sin, like I did for my previous build, then Chosen by the Stars is great, especially if you're using the created stuff, like from his 2 star. You get that created spell that'll trigger Augment, and if you target him with it, it'll trigger Fated. You get those bonuses, so you get a lot of permanent stats on him from that, and that can work quite well. You can also use something like Champion's Purse. That way when you're challenging in on things, you can generate coins. That gives you another spell that you can use each time. And so then you can trigger that 8/8 as well pretty easily, and you can get more spell mana back and play other things. Searing Brilliance, this just gets us more spells in our deck, makes them cheaper. Certainly not necessary by any means. We're not doing any special combo, though his champion spell is part of his deck. So you do have the potential to hit his champion spell. You can sort of, cycle him back into your deck, draw more copies of him, keep using it. It does generate, his champion spell does generate another 1-cost spell afterwards. So you can't really do this infinitely unless you have a way of reducing the cost of this as well. Because eventually your hand will fill up with fleeting 1-cost spells, and then your sort of draw engine will stop. So nothing really to do there with infinite build or anything like that, but you can benefit just from casting multiple spells with this, so that can be quite good. Another thing, both his champion spell, this plus gives you +2/+0, and his other spell, the one that you get from his 2-star, do give you stats. So you can use the Yasuo, or not Yasuo, Yi, Master Yi relic, the secret technique. This makes it so when you get stats from a spell, you get twice as many instead. So instead of like +3/+0 or +0/+3 from his 2-star spell, you can get +6/+0 or +0/+6, which can be pretty good. And then you can also get additional stats from this. So that's certainly something you can get, and especially if you're drafting spells that give you bonus stats, can be very good. You are trying to cast a lot of spells and get those bonuses, so just scaling up faster can be quite good on that side. Additional spellcasting stuff, there is another relic that gives you, if you have the attack token, you get a free spell each turn. So this is also another way to get a free spell to cast. So this just makes it so when you have the attack token, you get a random spell that costs 2 from your regions, and then it costs 0 instead. There is some chance that you won't be able to cast this spell, because sometimes it hits things that require you to target like equipment or landmarks or other things like that. And then if those things aren't on the board, then you can't really cast them. And sometimes it's things that force you to recall your units, and if you only have one unit out there and you're trying to get that +8/+8, you don't want to recall your unit. So there is a lot more variance with this. That's why I think Perfect Hex Core is better, but you can use both of them, or, you know, if you only have one of these, you can just use one or the other. But yeah, having some way to cast free spells. By the way, this also happens on every turn, whereas this only happens when you gain the attack token. You can gain this more times if you have things like Scout and whatnot, so you reset your attack token, or if you have ways of rallying on your board, you can generate this multiple times in a round. So there are, you know, you can potentially trigger this more than once, but in general, this will trigger more often, and you'll be able to use it more often, because this only requires you to have a unit on board, and it'll trigger every turn rather than just turns where you have the attack token. Other things you can do, if you want to scale up his mana gems, you can get him to Titanic with just using Luminous Orb. So this is an easy way to get him to 8 health, and that will trigger Titanic. That way you can start getting him on the board a bit earlier and doing that. Again, this, if you don't have a form of Overwhelm, I don't think he's going to be as strong. You can just sort of force things through. But in this case, I would say, okay, you know, you just focus on getting more mana gems and use, you know, some other form of Overwhelm, this, or Chosen by the Stars, or one of the other ones we talked about, to make sure that you can still punch through. It will be a bit harder to get your 2 spells each turn when you're just doing this. So I personally don't think Starforged Gauntlets is the best play for him, but it is something you can do, especially because, you know, he only has 3 stars. This will help you get on the board a bit faster. So let's look at some of the other things. If you're going to use Found Fortune, you want to do a tempo play. What this is going to draw you is the Concussive Palm. So by default, as long as you don't draft any other 4-cost things, this will get you a spell in hand when you drop Lee Sin. So that can be quite good for that turn. Plus it's a stun, so, and it generates a creature for you. So yeah, that's can definitely make it if you want the attack token. If you have both Found Fortune and Perfect Hex Core, that gives you your 2 spells for the turn. You can use all your 5 mana to drop Lee Sin and still have enough to cast 2 spells get him Challenger and Barrier. And if you've already cast 8 spells, then you can right away do your, Dragon Kick thing. So that's Dragon's Rage. You can do that, and that can be a great tempo play for the turn that you toss down Lee Sin. But yeah, just keep that in mind. I wouldn't say there's beyond just, this always tends to be like a tempo thing. Sometimes you can do infinite combos with it. For him, I would say not so much, but this can also work quite well with the Searing Brilliance, and that can make sure that you're drawing other good cards as well. So let's continue. Getting spell mana also very strong with him. So if you're using Hidden Tome, Lost Chapter, or the Archangel Staff, all very good, especially because you are always going to get that fleeting 2-cost spell in your hand. That's just another spell you can cast. This makes sure that you can cast it, similar to what we were just talking about with Found Fortune. This is another way to just guarantee that the turn that you drop him, you're able to cast 2 spells, get him the Challenger and Barrier, and make it easier to trade in the board, as well as, do other things. You can potentially, if you have his 8 cost, you can already do the kick combo, which is great. Let's continue here. He is I wouldn't say there's any huge benefit to tossing him out super early, so doing like the Swain Relic Packed Powder stuff. You can optimize trades by casting more spells and giving him Challenger and Barrier, and then he gets the +8/+8, so that can make it easier to remove and control the board. But I would say that sacrifices a bit too much, and you won't end up with Overwhelm and stuff like that if you're using the Swain Relic plus Packed Powder and Scourge's Stash. So wouldn't recommend that. It's always an option, but yeah, I think focusing more on his spells is a better way to go. So on the Epic Relic side, I think that's most of what's reasonable for him. On the Blue Relic side, we already mentioned Archangel Staff, always great. Chemtech Duplicator, also really strong. This way you can just play 1 spell once you're at 6 mana gems, and you will get that duplicate, so really good. Then, you can also use the Grand Generals. This is a great way to, or substitute this out for the Grand Generals. You can do it how you want. This will guarantee that you get his champion spell in hand. He does have, from his level ups, his champion spell gets this, so it costs only 1 rather than 2, and it also summons a Poro when you use it. So keep that in mind. That can be very good for making sure, okay, as long as you have 1 spell mana, or I guess you would need 2 to cast 2 spells by default, because the spell that comes out of this is a 1-cost spell. So you play a 1-cost spell, then a second 1-cost spell. That gets you your 2 spells. And so as long as you have 2 spell mana, if you're using Grand Generals, then you can cast that every turn. And if you're using, Chemtech Duplicator, you only really need to cast 1 spell. So if you have, 1 spell mana each turn, you can already cast this, and it'll cast 2 copies. It'll generate 2 of the resonating strikes in your hand. If you have, extra spell mana, you can then give him an extra +8/+0. So with the Chemtech Duplicator. So really strong that, effectively 1 spell turns into 6 spells. And so that alone should get you the level up really quickly. And then if you just have a form of Overwhelm, like we were talking about with the Troll King's Crown, or some other method of Overwhelm, really strong, able to push through damage really quickly. So highly recommend, if you're just going for blue relics, a build like this. That'll help you get there. Early game, this really relies on you getting Lee Sin on the board. So early game, you're just trying to survive and get your keep control of the board, make sure you're not taking too much damage, but then when you drop Lee Sin, the following turn you should be able to get a big combo in, provided you get the attack token. Otherwise you'll have to wait another turn. So yeah, anyway, even on your defensive turn though, you should be able to make optimal trades just by, using this, casting multiple spells, getting that +8/+8 on your strongest unit, and then defending with them. And then also Lee Sin will get barrier and be able to defend effectively. So we'll be really strong that way. Other spells you can generate, getting redoubled valor when you drop Lee Sin can be all right. Typically takes some more setup and can be a bit more difficult to do something like that, but doubling his stats multiple times, especially if you've already triggered that +8/+8 and then you use redoubled valor, that's going to make it so you get that additional +8/+8 permanently. And if you're using like Chemtech Duplicator and you double twice, you're going to get a whole bunch of extra stats permanently. So this can be really strong, but again, also requires a lot of setup. And then also need to make sure that they don't have some removal or something like that for Lee Sin. So I would say this requires a lot more things to go your way than it does to just use the Grand General's counter plan, but also can be effective for this. So other things, I don't feel like there's too much crazy in other items that you can go for. I haven't messed around with too many other non-spell based builds where you're not focusing on leveraging his 3-star. I think that is the sort of crux of his champion stuff. You can use something, because he is a somewhat expensive champion to get out, you can use stuff like the Frozen Tomb to get him out and then just be able to cast spells on him, sort of cheat him out that way. But other things I think are going to be more difficult. He gets Challenger and Barrier, so attacking in with him, you typically don't need things like Death's Foil or the Stormrazor, even though normally to keep a champion healthy you would want to do something like this, but he protects himself fine as long as you're able to cast multiple spells. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. Banshee's Veil, of course, is going to be good for preventing spells from removing him, but key things for him, just reiterate it one last time, getting ways to cast spells, so like spell mana, ways to generate spells themselves, like Perfect Hex Core or Grand Generals, other things like that. So generating spells, generating spell mana, and then Overwhelm. These are all the things you really want to focus on with Lee Sin to be successful with him. So anyway, hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's any other champions you want to see, and we'll catch you in the next one.